Welcome back, boys and girls. I'm Mr. Albrecht, and this is Skills Unit 2, Lesson 13. And today we're going to be editing the writing of the draft that you did on a previous lesson. Today you want to make sure you have your draft and a pencil nearby, and we're going to edit together in this lesson, and then after the lesson's over, you get a chance to work on editing your own draft to make it better. All right, got everything? All right. Unit 2, Lesson 13. Our learning targets today are going to be to edit a peer's writing piece. Now you're at home. We don't have a peer, somebody in our classroom that we can edit, so I've picked one that we're going to look at together. But you should be able to take this skill later on when you're in school and be able to apply it to a peer's writing piece. And the second one is I can identify antonyms, and we'll have to find out what those are later on in the lesson. So you first planned and then drafted a book report. We're working on that narrative book report, and we're going over that hare and the hedgehog story from the last few lessons. And you've planned the elements on the sheet that you have the beginning, middle, and end. You have the characters, you have the setting. And so we're going to take that information, and you wrote it on your draft sheet. And that draft sheet was 12.1. I have a copy here too. And on 12.1, it gave you some starters, sentences, and then you finished it out. And best thing to do would have been to write that on another sheet of paper. So if you haven't done that, that's okay. That's something that you could go ahead and do afterwards today. Go ahead and write it on another piece of paper, and I'll give you a hint. When you do that, skip every other line, because when we go back to editing, you go back to editing, I should say, because you're going to edit your own paper, then you have space above each sentence and each line of text to make changes. You'll see how that works today. So we're going to edit today. That's our stop on our writing plan. We planned, then we drafted, and now we're editing. So you're going to edit your own. You're going to keep that for the next lesson. All right, boys and girls, find your workbooks and turn to 13.1. Look for that worksheet number in the top right corner. And 13.1 is a checklist that's going to identify some areas that authors want to look at when they're writing. And what it's going to do is it's going to help us when we look at our writing today to see if my writer has all of these things. They may not. It's okay. You, the entire class out there, are going to be using this editing checklist at home to edit the student's draft that I have prepared for us on screen. All right, so the editing checklist I have here is the same one that's in your book, 13.1. I've just made it a little bit more colorful. Let's go through it. First thing that you see on yours is, do I have a title? Okay, so we're going to look for a title, and you'll see that in just a moment. Have I described the setting at the start? Have I named and described the characters? Do I have a plot with a beginning, middle, and end? Do all of my sentences start with uppercase letters? Do all of my sentences end with punctuation? Period, question mark, exclamation point? Have I spelled all of my words correctly? And have I added sense words that describe how things look, feel, taste, sound, and smell? Remember those 5 senses we like to put into our writing to make our writing even better, make the reader feel like they're there. In the future, you're going to be expected to edit your own work. So these are things you're going to constantly be looking for. It's best to start looking for them when you're writing your draft because it makes the editing phase a little bit easier. All right, so let's look at the copy that I've written for us. And I want you to look at the first checklist item on 13.1. It's going to ask you, does it have a title? So we look at this writing and we see the hedgehog and the hare is separated from this. So that's our title. Remember, we started with that on 12.1. We put at the very top, the hedgehog and the hare. So the first thing we're looking for, does that draft have a title? This one does, so you can check that off on your checklist. All right, boys and girls, we've checked to see if the draft has a title. Now, let's work through the remainder of our checklist together. While we edit, it is important to use those same conventions. We're going to call them conventions to correct our work. And I'm going to go through 3 main conventions that we use as editors. So you're going to put your editing pen in your hand, and you're going to put an editing cap on maybe, and you get to work on these. So when I'm editing, I'm looking to see, do I need words someplace? Do I need spelling? Do I need capitalization in places? And I have to mark that so that when I look back at my draft, I know what to correct when I rewrite it. So one of the main ones is this caret. It's C-A-R-A-T, not like the carrot you eat. But a caret is where a word or punctuation needs to be inserted into the writing. So look at our example over here. It said, originally it said, I tell you about the main character. And you think, as an editor, you look at that and it's missing something. It's missing the word will. So I would draw a little caret and I would say, I will tell you about the main character. So now when I go back to rewrite that, I remember I need to include the word will. Let's look at another one. Crossing out capitalization. So look at this example originally. It had a lowercase I. It says, I will tell you about the main characters. It's got the word will in there now, but maybe pretend that you made a mistake and you didn't capitalize that I. And so now we're going to cross that I out and put the capital right above it so that, again, when I go back and rewrite it, I know to make sure I capitalize that I at the beginning of the sentence, and anywhere I appears in the sentence, right? And then another big one is to be able to cross out punctuation mistakes. In other words, what if I said, I will tell you about the main character? That's not a question, that's a statement. So we're going to cross out the question mark and we're going to put a period right above it because that sentence doesn't need a question mark, it needs to be a period. All right, boys and girls, let's read through the draft that I have copied up here for us so that you know what the story says. Okay? So the hedgehog and the hare. That's our title. We've already checked it. We know that's there. The main characters are the hedgehog and his wife and the hare. The next paragraph reads, the tale takes place outside on a farm between fence home. In the tale, the hedgehog told his wife the plan to trick the hare and win the race. The hedgehog and the hare raced to the house, but when the hare reached the house, the hare saw the hedgehog's wife. The hedgehog's wife helped the hedgehog trick the hare. The hare was shocked to see the hedgehog winning the race. Then the hare started to do the race 10 more times and lost, so he fell to the ground and started to do huffing and puffing at the hedgehog's feet, and the hedgehog just smiled. I'm going to go back to the beginning of our paper, and we've said it has a title, so we can check that off our list. Let's look at the second one on our list. Have I described the setting at the start? So let's look back at our writing and see if the writer has described the setting. So I remember reading something about the tale taking place because if you remember on 12.1, your worksheet gave you the sentence starter, the tale takes place. So I read that right here. The tale takes place outside on a farm field between fence and home. So the writer has included that. So we can put a check mark on our checklist right there next to it. Number 3, have I named and described the characters? Have I named and described the characters? Well, the first paragraph tells me that the main characters are the hedgehog and his wife and the hare. So this writer has named the characters, but hasn't described them. So that might be a suggested area that this writer could improve upon, right? Make that first paragraph where those main characters are listed, but they're really not described. Make that stronger. Give us some feelings about what they look like, maybe, you know, what they act like. What were the impressions that we got when you read the story of those characters? And include that in this paragraph. So we can put a check mark on our paper that I've named and described the characters, but you might want to put a little marker next to that, like a question mark. Just go back at it and check it. Because if you were looking at your own paper and you did the same thing, you did include the characters, but you really didn't describe them. So that would be an area you might not even check off as your own personal paper. But for our sake, the writer did include them. I just would suggest that the writer put some more emphasis into describing the characters. All right, next one, number 4. Do I have a plot with a beginning, a middle, and an end? So I'm going to go to the next page because it starts a little bit after this where we start to see the beginning, middle, and end. If we're looking for the beginning, think back to the story. What happened in the beginning of our story? Well, remember that the hedgehog and the hare were having a conversation, and then the hedgehog challenged the hare to a race. Well, when this writer starts writing, it says, in the tale, the hedgehog told his wife the plan to trick the hare and win the race. All right, so really the writer, in this case, started almost in the middle when that hedgehog sat down with his wife and told him of his plan. So in this case, our writer does not have a good, strong beginning in the plot. So we would not check off the beginning section on this. On your checklist, number 4 is a big wide box, okay? So I usually tell my students I need to see 3 check marks in there. I'm looking for 1 for the beginning, 1 for the middle, and 1 for the end. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. At this point, I don't see a strong beginning in this one, so I would not check that off. But let's see if the middle is there. Well, I just said I felt like this was starting in the middle, so I would start to say, yes, let's read a little further to review. The hedgehog and the hare raced to the house, but when the hare reached the house, the hare saw the hedgehog's wife. All that kind of goes into that middle section in our story, doesn't it? So yes, the writer does have a middle. Check next to a middle, make sure that that's marked. Now, does the writer include an end to her story or to her book report? I'm going to go to the next page because that's the last page in my report, and I'm looking back over that, and I see the point where the hare has started to do the race 10 more times. And as I'm looking down through the end of the story here, and I see where the hedgehog saw the hare huffing and puffing at his feet, and the hedgehog just smiles. That leaves me kind of at the end of the story, but it doesn't end our narrative book report. Remember back in our previous lesson, the narrative book report asks us to include an impression or an opinion of the story that you read, and make sure, kind of say, okay, I think this book is a really good book because, so you're telling the reader of your writing that fact, that opinion that you have about the story. This writer does not include a concluding statement, like a summary of her book that she read about the hedgehog and the hare. Something along that line would need to be in here at the end of her story or her narrative book report. Probably cannot check the end at this point. I would not check the end on this one because we still need those opinions and that concluding statement. So number 5, do all my sentences start with uppercase letters? Well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to start very top with my title because we've got to remember, what does the title always have to have, right? Capital uppercase letters. So that would be the first thing I would want to take my pencil and mark up on this particular writer's draft, because this writer forgot to capitalize the hedgehog word. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to mark that little lowercase h out right there, and right above it I'm going to put my capital H. So when I look back and I'm rewriting this, I know that needs to be addressed. Now I keep looking for number 5. Do all my sentences start with uppercase letters? So the main characters are the hedgehog and his wife. Yep, the is capitalized. That's one sentence. There's a period at the end. So that one's good. The tale takes place outside on a farm field between fence and home. All right, so that has a beginning capital, so we're good for that sentence. Let's keep going. In the tale, the hedgehog told his wife the plan to trick the hare and win the race. Okay, there's a period, so go back at the beginning of that sentence, and that does have a capital I. So we're good there. The hedgehog and the hare raced to the house, but when the hare reached the house, the hare saw the hedgehog's wife. The hedgehog's wife helped the hedgehog trick the hare. Period there. Capital there. We're good on that one. So this writer's got a good grasp of capitalizing and making that uppercase letter there for the first beginning sentence. All right, let's look at the next. Now, the last sentence started on the bottom of this page. It says, the hare was shocked to see the hedgehog winning the race. Then the hare started to do the race 10 more times and lost. So he fell to the ground and started to do the huffing and puffing at the hedgehog's feet, and the hedgehog just smiled. That's all one sentence, but remember, we're looking for this writer to see if that first sentence was capitalized. So we got to go back to the last page, and it was capitalized at the very bottom. So we can put a check mark next to that. Number 5, do all my sentences start with uppercase letters? Yes, they did. All right, number 6, do all my sentences end with a final mark? So go back to the beginning of your writing, or in this case, our draft here that we're looking at. We're going to go back to the beginning and look to see, do all the sentences end with punctuation? So let's check that again just real quickly, because I think we saw that in the last one, but we want to make sure we can check off 6 solid. So we look at the first sentence. The main characters are the hedgehog and his wife and the hare, period. There it is. We're good. Next sentence. The tale takes place outside on a farm field between fence and home. Now there. This writer did not include a punctuation at the end of that word. Okay? Or at the end of that sentence. They did not include it right here. And they probably because they ran out of space when they wrote it. But that would be someplace we would want to take our marker or pencil and put in, and if you don't have a lot of space, you can put a caret going down and then just put a little period inside it. That means that you're going to put that period down in there, okay? So that's one place we did find that this one did not have a punctuation at the end. All right, let's check the rest. In the tale, the hedgehog told his wife to plan to trick the hare and win the race, period. That one's good. Next sentence, the hedgehog and the hare raced to the house, but when the hare reached the house, the hare saw the hedgehog's wife, that's a comma. The hedgehog's wife helped the hedgehog trick the hare, period. So that one has an ending punctuation. That's all we're looking for, ending punctuation. The hare was shocked to see the hedgehog winning the race. Then the hare started to do the race 10 more times and lost, so he fell to the ground and started to do the huffing and puffing at the hedgehog's. Whew, that's a big sentence. Hedgehog's feet and the hedgehog just smiled, period. So we've got a punctuation at the end. So this writer only missed one spot. So unfortunately, we cannot check that off because we have not done it all, okay? So that's when we're checking. We want to see, do all my sentences end with a final mark? In this case, they didn't. So we'll leave that one. Next, number 7. Have I spelled all my words correctly? So this one gets a little trickier. So we're going to go back to the beginning. And this is where I say use your individual code charts. Grab a dictionary. If you've got a children-friendly dictionary nearby, that would help you, okay? But you're going to want to look at each word carefully to make sure you've spelled it correctly. So if we start at the beginning, the main characters are the hedgehog and his wife and the hare. All those spellings look good to me. What I was doing while I was looking at that, I was thinking about the sounds of each of those letters, and I might have to look at each word. I might even need to cover up the other words while I'm doing it. Okay, whatever works for you to help you look at the word and the sounds in those letters to make sure they're combining and spelling the words correctly. And if you have a friend that's really good at spelling, they also can help you, okay? So don't be afraid to ask for help when it comes to looking at spelling, because sometimes we don't see our own spelling mistakes, but somebody else might catch them. But I did see that we have a capital H on hare. Now in our story, in our reader, we did not have capital H at the beginning of hedgehog or hare. So we want to take that and make sure that it's the same in our writing. So we would then cross out that H, that capital H, and just put a lowercase h above it, because that's something we want to go back and change later on. Other than that, it was spelled correctly, and I could always use my reader to check my spelling as well. Okay, the tale takes place outside on a farm field between the fence and the home. Okay, a couple things there I see as an editor. The spelling looks good, but again, I see a capital F stuck in here for field, and that's not a proper noun. So we're not saying Jim Bob's field, we're saying this just a field. So we're going to cross that out, and we're going to put a lowercase f above that just to say, hey, we're going to change that when we rewrite it. The other thing we could do is say, okay, writer, I would suggest that you take out the slash and you put in the word and. That's the writer's choice, whether the writer wants to do that, but that's something I noticed in that sentence. Let's look at a couple more, looking for spelling errors, because I haven't found any yet. All right, in the tale, the hedgehog told his wife the plan to trick the hare and win the race. Again, this writer's got a good grasp of spelling because everything looked pretty good there. The hedgehog and the hare raced to the house, but when the hare reached the house, the hare saw the hedgehog's wife. The hedgehog's wife helped the hedgehog trick the hare. Okay, no words reach out at me and tell me they're spelled wrong. I do see some inconsistencies again, which means they're not always the same. And she's used capital H for hedgehog here and lower h for hedgehog somewhere else in the paper, right down here. And she's used capital H for hare. So we want to make note of those and help her or him when they go back to rewrite this. So we would go through, and I'm not going to do every one on our video, but you'll see if there's no room at the top of your page, just put it right underneath it. And we're going to go through and change those to make sure that all of them are the same as we go through our draft and our writing. Okay? So you go through and finish the rest of them on your paper. When you get to that point, you would just finish and go through all of them, make sure that hares and the hedgehogs maybe are the same lowercase h. So the next sentence, the hare was shocked. I guess listening for oct, and that looks right to me. Okay, to see the hedgehog winning the race. Then the hare started to do the race 10 more times and lost, so he fell to the ground and started to do huffing and puffing. Okay, both of those were spelled right because our base words have double consonants. All we have to do is add the ing, so those are right. At the hedgehog's feet, and the hedgehog just smiled. So this writer did a very nice job on her spelling. So we would want to make sure that we check that off. I've spelled all my words correctly. In this case, this writer spelled all the words correctly. So check that one off. All right, last one on your checklist, number 8, says, have I added sense words that describe how things look, feel, taste, sound, or smell? So all those things that you normally know from kindergarten, remember when you learned all those senses, you use them when you write. It helps your writing. It makes it much more interesting to read. So if I go back and I look at the beginning of this story, and I think about, we've already discussed the fact that her first paragraph where she did include the named characters, but she really did not give a good description of maybe the characters looked like or what they were feeling at the time during the race or during the story. So there was nothing like that in this first paragraph. The tale takes place outside of the farm field between fence and home. That's another place for setting that you could really develop the story and really include some of the things that you see and smell and hear around the farm. And so as I go back through this and I think about the places that he or she could have included, then I would say, probably can't check that one off because I feel like the writer should include more sense words. So that one you would leave blank, okay? So we've gone through the checklist, we've looked at it closely, we've made some marks on our draft up here, and in a future lesson you're going to edit your own, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to be trying to edit your own work to make things look better, okay? So when you get to that, grab that checklist that we just completed today and think back to the video. You can even replay it and see and look for those areas that you need to do better in as you look at your draft. So boys and girls, we've just finished checklist 13.1. We've gone through all 8 steps. Let's stop and take a break. But before we leave for that break, I want you to remember what we watched here in this video because you're going to need it on our next lesson, okay? But for now, stand up, get yourself moving around a little bit, shake out some arms, and let's try a few little things. Let's try first to act like you're driving a car. So act like you're driving cars. What are you going to do? You're going to get in the car, sit down maybe a little bit, kind of do a little squat with your knees. That'll help kind of loosen up your knees a little bit. And what you're going to do is put your hands on your steering wheel, 10 and 2, keep them there. Never take them off 10 and 2, that's what they tell me. So you're going to kind of steer a little bit. You're just driving straight. We got to keep our wheel moving just a little bit. You've watched your mom or dad maybe moving a little bit. And how many have maybe they see their parents reach down and they move a stick shift in the middle of the car? They might have to do that a little bit, okay? So you take your hand off and do that real quick, put it back up here, and you're driving, and you might have to look in the mirror, check your mirrors, both sides, and you're driving, and then make a left turn, and straighten back out, okay? And so now we're gonna slow down, so put your foot on the brake, slow down, there you go. And park it, so you got your steering wheel, and you gotta move this little gear over here again, park, and you're good to get out of the car, so you open the car door and step back out, and you're ready to go. So hopefully you act like you're driving a car. Next, let's zig and zag, right? But we're not gonna be in a car zigging and zagging, we're just gonna zigzag. So step back a little bit away from your learning location maybe, and put your hands together because you wanna get that good zig going, right? So we're gonna zig this way, and we're gonna zag that way, we're gonna zig, and we're gonna zag. So we can do that a couple times, maybe at your spot. We're just gonna zig this way, I'm gonna zig that way, I'm gonna zig this way. So you kind of think about how you can zigzag and just get some movement going on. And the last one, after you're done zigging and zagging, is to just stop in place, make an ice cube. We're gonna be a square. So we're gonna square up like this. And now I'm gonna turn the heat up on you. So I'm gonna make you melt. Remember, we're a solid at this point, and we're gonna start to go into a liquid. So we gotta melt. So I'm gonna turn the heat up, and so as an ice cube, what are you gonna do? You're gonna start melting. So the side's gonna kind of wavy like this, right? And so there's starting to puddle down, right? And so you can take it all the way, I will not, but you can take it all the way down to the floor and just make yourself a big puddle on the floor, because what happens to an ice cube after it melts? It's just a little puddle of water. So once you've kind of wiggled them out, made that cute puddle, you can stand back up and have a seat back at your learning location, and let's finish this lesson up. So, boys and girls, we're going to look at antonyms. Now, antonyms are words that are the opposite of each other. They have the opposite meaning. So, for instance, example, hot and cold. I just had you do an ice cube, right? You were cold, and I turned up the heat, and you got hot, and you melted. So, an antonym is the opposite. It has the opposite meaning. Another one, fast, slow. So, if I was zigzagging fast in my brain break, I might slow it down. So it's the opposite of. And then the last example I have for you is something that's big. The opposite, the antonym, is small. One of the ways I teach my students to this trick is look at the first 3 letters, ant. So an ant is tiny, right? And an elephant is large. So I always think elephant, ant. There's their antonyms. They're the opposites. So that's a great thing to put in your head. What's an antonym? Oh yeah, it's the opposite. If an ant's small, an elephant's large. So you have small, large, or small, big. All right, boys and girls, we just covered a few examples up here. Let me give you some words used in a sentence and see if you can think of the antonym at home, okay? So the first sentence is that the fox is quiet. What is an antonym for quiet? I bet you said loud, right? Because you're probably thinking the opposite of quiet is loud. Okay, good. Let's try another one. Jane, from the milk, remember that story? Jane wants her pig to get plump. All right, what is the antonym for plump? Plump versus thin. So think about that, right? If something is not thin, it's plump. Okay, here's another one. Mike is a young boy. What is an antonym for young? He isn't old, is he? So think about the antonyms is the opposite of the other word. So young versus old, plump versus thin, and quiet versus loud. Good job. Boys and girls, look for antonyms as you're reading. Look for those words that could have the opposite meaning. So let's think about this. Can I meet my learning goals? I can edit a peer's writing piece. We edited a peer's writing piece together today. I can identify antonyms. I can identify antonyms. So when we think about that, am I able to think about a word that means the opposite when I'm reading? So you're being able to identify antonyms. All right, boys and girls, this has been Unit 2, Lesson 13. I'm Mr. Albrecht, and I look forward to working with you next time. Bye-bye.